Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Jersey Joe Corner, and we're going to be talking about how the Devils team is going to look for this upcoming fall through winter season. From what I've gathered over the offseason is that with the trade for Mirko Mueller, the defenseman from Switzerland, who came from the San Jose Sharks in the trade for the 2018 second round and third round picks of Toronto and San Jose, if I'm correct, via Cap Friendly, if you want to double check that. If you really want to take a look at the Devils' depth on defense, it's rather thin right now, but Damon Severson has yet to come to a contract with Ray Shero and company. I mean, last time this year for the Winnipeg Jets was Jacob Trouba was in a similar situation, but it took a little bit longer to get the X amount of years, longer term, and more dollars for that rate. And so, even though there were trade rumors going around after he resigned, you'd have to pay a premium price for a young offensive defenseman. And in Damon Severson's case, I personally think he's going to get at least maybe an average of 5 years, maybe 3 years to kind of get him out of the restricted free agency into the fourth year if he does resign. That's just me as an optimistic fan. However, in this case, if he does resign for at least 3 years or a little bit extra, I would say you might think I'm crazy, but I give him at least $3.5 million a year. Front load him a little extra, make him want to perform more, because he did have a good year, scoring more than 31 points, and he's a young budding defenseman that the Devils picked up in the second round of the draft. If you remember, so he was one of those gems that actually proved to be a critical piece for when Shero came in, inheriting him through Lou Lamoriello. So now we move on to John Moore. He's a two-way defender. He's fast, not exactly the fastest, but he's really good with the puck. He carries it. He's almost like a fourth forward, and he can really do a really good job. The question is, if the team doesn't make it to playoffs, my guess is there might be some trade speculations, sure. But, however, if the right offer does not come at the right price, why should Ray Shero trade him? Even if it means for a good return on equity. And when I mean return on equity, I mean the guy's got some age, but he's not too old and he's not too young. However, if a team that is in the playoff hunt, let's say, hypothetically, if Edmonton wanted him and the Devils wanted a young defender in return, like a couple young defenders or something like that in some package, it would probably be worth Ray Shero's time for a couple defenders who are game day ready and don't need too much tuning up. Because if you remember, Montreal did, however, trade away Mikhail Sergachev, who was a really good offensive defenseman, and they sent him to Tampa Bay in the Jonathan Drouin deal. So they get a francophone in Drouin who can really be a highly skilled forward, maybe easily third line, top two pairing easily in a rookie. But anyways, what I'm saying is the Devils still have a lot of digging when it comes to adding defense. So right now on defense, I have to give the Devils a D. However, when it comes to the offense, let's get to the offense. The Devils have Taylor Hall. You have Kyle Palmieri. You have Adam Henrique. You have Travis Zajac. Zajak's not going to be the starter. He's going to be the third line center who's easily going to stabilize the middle. And he's going to have guys like Mojo on his wing, Marcus Johansson, who the Devils just practically traded a bag of pucks for and a couple of picks. So if you think about it, that's just adding icing onto the cake. And this cake isn't ready for the party. When I say not ready for the party, I'm not thinking about the Stanley Cup at all yet, because we already are adding the pieces of the top six, Palmieri, the right wing, Taylor Hall to the left. Pretty soon you're going to have Nico Hischier, who is going to be from third line at least to second line. And maybe Adam Henrique might flip up and forth. You just never know, because this team does have Brian Boyle, and I really like Boyle's physicality. And when he was with the Rangers, I really was disgusted that he was the guy giving us a hard time in and out. And even when he played for Tampa Bay, I wish he still was playing for the Devils. But you know what? Having ties to Corey Schneider, they played hockey in New England together, because that's where a lot of good development programs are these days, and still is. They end up playing together at Boston College and developed the chemistry. And so now you have a special connection working between Schneider and Boyle. Especially John Hines is from Rhode Island, and of course, having him playing and coaching in Hockey East gives him a good sense of who these guys are and how they understand each other. So camaraderie and chemistry on and off ice is very important, because when you have Boyle sticking up for Corey Schneider, especially when we play the freaking Flyers, regardless if it's Nolan Patrick, regardless if it's Wayne Simmons, regardless of who is on that team at that time, Boyle's going to be standing up. He's not going to be letting Miles Wood doing all the physical work, because Miles Wood, I forgot to mention, he had 2 goals last year versus Philadelphia, and he became the most wanted man at the Wells Fargo Center. So if you think about it, Miles Wood has a lot of speed, he has a lot of agility. He just got to be stronger and much better puck handler. And if you can't puck handle, you really aren't that good with the puck at all. But, however, a guy his size does screen goaltenders. So there is, I would say right now, the Devils are looking at a B+, A- situation. A-, I would say, is if we can get that fourth line rocking. And if we can keep it rocking like that, we're going to be more competitive than last year. We're not going to be scoring 181 goals. We're going to probably be scoring at least 200 to maybe 250 if we can easily get 4 lines rocking. At least 1 point, a line easily. So the other thing is, if we do get the defense to be more bolstered, if there's a guy who's a PTO, whether it's Franzen or whoever is out there, the offseason for defense for the free agent market hasn't been that strong. So the question is Ray going to make another move? I don't blame him if he has to make another move, but if there's someone who is willing to put on the uniform and ready to put that crest first and think about playing great defense. And if you recall Ben Lovejoy last year, he really had a bad year. I personally wasn't a big fan of Lovejoy in the first place, but nothing against Ray. Sometimes you have to experiment with the guy in order to understand, especially if it's for 3 years. And now we're in year 2 of Lovejoy's situation in his contract. So does he get traded to a contender? Maybe. But if we do somehow pull off a miracle and easily make, let's say, 8th seed, because we get someone in the system who is a pretty good defender, or somehow Shiro pulls off a trade with, let's say, one of his buddies like David Poyle or Mark Fletcher, or if he calls up Detroit because Detroit is against the cap, you never know. But a lot of weird things happen. But remember, this is the GMs themselves have like a gentleman's agreement. It kind of reminds me, nothing against the trade to get Taylor Hall for Adam Larson, to send Larson to Edmonton. And I think, when Shiro had that deal, or was talking about a deal with Chiarelli over a year ago, prior, it looked like they both looked into 2 players, one on each side they liked, and it looks like they found, Shiro found his winger, and Chiarelli found his defender, who helped increase the output and reduce the amount of liability. Now Shiro is doing the right thing for us, adding more offense. However, if someone has to get traded, he could possibly flip someone at the deadline or whatever, as long as it's worthwhile. But now, with Heischer in the lineup, he's going to be at least a third or second line center. And he's going to be a playmaker, but he also has this little Taylor Hall, like, I'm going to separate myself away from where the defenders are, or I'm going to cut back after carrying the puck by a couple of inches and open up the goaltender and play a lot like Datsuk. And he has a sneaky, smart, very quick, very suave hands. He's a very savvy player. So I look forward to this being a pretty good year, but I don't think it's going to be playoff year. And if that happens, I really think it's going to be a very interesting team for a long time. But I think with the draft being dubbed really good for defensemen through guys like Craig Button and Bob McKenzie, now those guys work for TSN. And when one of those hockey pundits does mention those players, especially you have Rasmus Dahlin, who is the clear-cut first overall pick under Craig Button's list. He's also a two-way player. If you ever watched the pre-Ivan Hlinka tournament, really good tournament that they had. And then you also have the Ivan Hlinka tournament going on, and then you also have the World Juniors going on around December, right after Christmas. So anyone that is looking forward to a very interesting time, like last year, when I was looking on Facebook, and I was also looking on draftsite.com on the NHL tab, I was following who was supposed to be the census pick of Nolan Patrick. Now, I kind of looked down that list, and I also looked at Nico Hischier. And then throughout the fall, when I was reading about a young player from Switzerland playing for the Halifax Mooseheads, and that kid started scoring about 40 plus points, maybe 46 points at the time, Nico scored, and I was looking at some highlight film. I was already sold. And then once December rolled in, Team Switzerland played, and Team USA wasn't on, and I was like, this kid really looks interesting. And I was like, I like his senses. I like the way he skates. I like the way he shoots. And I think this kid has a future. And then, so, long and behold, the Team USA Team Switzerland game came along. Switzerland had Nico Hischier open up Tyler Parsons. On the first goal, he started to come around from the point, then he moved inward, down towards the crease. And he really just chipped it in from what it looked like from my angle. And he was very deceptive on that play. Now, the next drive that he gets, Nico is in this, what Doc Emmerich would call a net mouse scramble. Okay? Net mouse scramble. So, imagine you're the goaltender. You're Parsons. You're a player who's already drafted. And a bunch of guys on Team USA are covering the corner of Parsons on his left. And so now Nico's looking, he's at top of the crease. He goes around. The puck is loose. He goes behind the net, right behind the net, and he goes to look at the opening hole. There's a little gap this big. And all of a sudden, Parsons is starting to slide. And Nico backhanded it in for a little mini empty net goal. And that was one of the things that was the one play that actually really said, this kid is top 2, at least number 1. He's gonna be a Devil. And so when the Devil season was going down to 11th, then I was thinking, ooh, draft lottery's coming. He might be getting Nico. And then all of a sudden, Devils get down to, I think it was 7th or 8th. And I could be correct, I could be wrong. Anyways, the Devils number was called. And I actually admit, when the draft lottery was being aired on TV in the U.S., I had butterflies in my stomach. So each time they got closer to New Jersey, and I heard Dallas moved up to the top 3, and then you had Philadelphia. I was like, please be New Jersey, please be New Jersey. And so the commissioner's second-hand man, Bill Daly, goes, New Jersey makes the top 3, or something like that. And I had a good feeling out of those 3 teams, New Jersey would get the first overall pick. So when Dallas was called first, I was like, oh boy, we're really onto something. So I'm talking to my buddy on Facebook Messenger. I said, Jake, are you feeling what I'm feeling? And then Bill Daly goes, and the first overall selection goes to the New Jersey Devils. And there's Ray Shiro sitting next to one of Hextall's guys. And they just shake hands, and the other GMs leave. And I had a really good feeling for a while that Shiro was picking Nico. And I remember from watching those videos of Nico doing interviews, looking at his highlights, from what I really liked about his personality, he reminded me, and I'm not going to say he's going to be the next Patrick Elias, but he had this very Swiss-German style version of Patrick Elias character traits, as if you took a Czech player mentality, like Elias, and you made him more like very like, yeah, I can't believe I'm gonna be about first overall pick type feeling, you know. And Nico's like being so humble through these interviews, and it was really intriguing to see a young man of his stature, uh, who mainly living in Switzerland, idolizing Russian hockey player Pavel Datsyuk as his um, as his hockey idol. But he did mention he also really liked Roman Yossi, and I also am a fan of Roman Yossi. So he's a really good defender with the Nashville Predators. So what does this have to do? Well, this kid has a great way of finding the right mindset of the right players to look up to as people he would say are great idols. And when you have that, it helps you as a person develop a great character for the game and the love of the game. And when I remember Nico saying at the draft, he really said, "I love to hockey," and I just remember that feeling. I was thinking to myself, I think if I was in that situation, I would be that nervous too, and I would probably say just that or something, if not very similar. But yeah, for me, thinking about the Devils right now, I don't think exactly we're eighth spot in the East, in the Metropolitan. I do think we're probably going to be maybe seventh or sixth, but I think we're going to be a really good team, but maybe a little bit below average. So if I'm giving this team a grade, look at goaltending. Corey Schneider, even on his worst year last year, I still give him a B plus because of that shoddy defense. And there were times that he had, you know, no mind left in it, you know, being worn out, sometimes being rusty. But at times, you know, my friend John Dawkins said, Joe, Corey's got a little bit of a slow glove. And I said, yeah, well, I think he might want to work on that in the off season. So I do think there's room for improvement a little bit more for Schneider's game. However, I think he should not have to pass the puck a little bit more. I think personally that defense, let the young guys step in, get their feet wet. If Mirko Mueller has a great year, then that's great, and I will be very happy. If Severson resigns for that RFA deal for at least 3 years or whatever, or something similar to Jacob Trouba, I'll be really happy. And as long as I see Severson keep panning out, scoring between 25, 35 points this year, I'll feel satisfied. So, for anyone else, leave comments below. Um, for my viewers in Switzerland, for my viewers in Canada, US, Brazil, wherever you are, leave a comment. Tell me what you think. We'll do another episode, and what I mean by we, well, you are my viewers, and I will do another take on the Jersey Joe Corner, and we will have more to talk about, especially preseason's coming, and I can't wait to see the draft prospects for 2018, especially when I went to watch the Chowder Cup recently in July, and apparently Brady Tkachuk, who was also in the Chowder Cup, was listed in there, and apparently Craig Button really likes him as a player to be in the top 3, top 5. So I do, however, have a few bonuses in this one. For those of you who really love goaltending, And if you like the NCAA tournament style at the Chowder Cup, there was this really good French Canadian player named Gabriel Pigeon, and he goes to the Hossack School now in upstate New York. Um, what I really liked out of that kid's game, he was a really great puck handler, and I swore I'm not gonna dub him as Marty Brodeur because that's gonna be insane. But this kid had really clean, crisp passing, and he really passed the puck even to uh, my father's girlfriend's grandson, Joey, who's a defenseman, and he's a two-way player. So he happened to get that pass from Gabrielle, and Gabrielle really turned the other team, changing their forecheck, retreating back into their defensive zone. And Joey, although took a shot on net, on the next face-off, after that face-off, his team actually scored on the next drive. And I looked over at Gabrielle's parents. I said, that just reminded me of a Brodeur type pass, and that was a great play, nonetheless. And I remember Gabrielle gave up in the termination game before the playoffs. He gave up only 2 goals. They lost 2-1. However, they play 50 minutes when they play Charter Cup. But there was a lot of amazing defense on both ends, and it could have gone either way. And this kid still was very fantastic. And also in one of the games, Gabriel did pitch a shutout, and he did win that game. And the other game, he only gave up 1 goal. So he was very stellar in my mind. And apparently, Craig Button says there's some talent there. And that's because I tweet Craig Button about certain players that I feel if I like a player, I'm going to recommend to see if I can get an expert like Craig Button on his personal view from the TSN seat. So for those of you, it's been a wonderful chat, and it's been a wonderful Jersey Joe Corner. Thank you very much. Have a great August, and hopefully we get another Jersey Joe Corner in, especially players can be making some signings right now, PTOs, whatever the heck it's going to be. Young players re-signing for RFA deals, yada yada, so forth. Thank you, and come again. Let's go Devils, and NHL rules.